Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. Right here in the live studios, where we've been locked down for a couple of months already, and we've got a lot of months ahead of us, looking forward to being locked down. Today is the VE Day here in the UK. VE is the victory for, it has to do with the World War II. And it's a victory day for the British over the Germans, or whatever it was. And I'm just here with Radharaman and Abhay Das Brahmachari, and we're relishing the idea that what we're doing is really celebrating the victory of the material mind and senses over the material energy. This is victory, D-Day, VE Day. And it comes from hearing the Srimad-Bhagavatam together. It's the process. Chanting Hare Krishna and reading Srimad-Bhagavatam together. And Bhagavad Gita and Chaitanya Charitamrita, but especially Srimad-Bhagavatam. Let's get right into it, shall we? Let's not waste any time from my meanderings. Okay, Srila Sanatana Goswami glorified the Bhagavatam after being empowered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. For 2 months straight, he explained everything about the science of Krishna consciousness. And this was Sanatana Goswami's glorification of Bhagavatam that he composed after hearing from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 2 months straight, excuse me. It goes like this. Sarva Shastra Dipiyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprida. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad-Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwandoditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad-Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nistadaka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostude. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhu tadayin adini chochita kara hanamun chagada chenmam premna rit kandayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we've reached the 12th Canto, 7th chapter, and we've reached chapter 21. We're being taken through by Sutta Goswami, because now Maharaj Parikshit has left the world, and Shukadev Goswami has gotten up and left the sages. So now we're hearing Sutta Goswami's account of that event, and now he's still there discussing with the sages of Naimisharanya, and we're being taken through a kind of, how do I say, a progression of the way the Vedic Shastras came into the material world. It started with Omkara, expanded into the different Vedas from Lord Brahma's mouths, and then given to his disciples, and then their disciples divided them into different divisions and gave them to their disciples. In this way, the Vedic knowledge is coming down and coming through, permeating the material world. And now we're hearing something about some of the ideas that come from those Shastras. So we're beginning with text 21. Either automatically or because of one's regulated spiritual practice, one's mind may stop functioning on the material platform of waking consciousness, sleep, and deep sleep. Then one understands the Supreme Soul and withdraws from material endeavor. Purport. As stated in the Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.25.33, Jarayat Yashu Ya Koshang Nigirnam Analo Yata. Bhakti, devotional service, dissolves the subtle body of the living entity without separate endeavor. Just as fire in the stomach digests all that we eat. The subtle material body is inclined to exploit nature through sex, greed, false pride, and madness. Loving service to the Lord, however, dissolves the stubborn false ego and lifts one to pure blissful consciousness, Krishna consciousness, the sublime perfection of existence. Text 22. Sages expert in ancient histories have declared that the Puranas, according to their various characteristics, can be divided into 18 major Puranas and 18 secondary Puranas. The 18 major Puranas are the Brahma, Padma, Vishnu, Shiva, Linga, Garuda, Narada, Bhagavata, Agni, Skanda, Bhavisha, Brahma-Vaivarta, Markandeya, Vamana, Varaha, Matsya, Kurma, and Brahmanda Puranas. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami has quoted from the Varaha Purana, Shiva Purana, and Matsya Purana in confirmation of the above two verses. Text 25. I have thoroughly described to you, O Brahmana, the expansion of the branches of the Vedas by the great sage Vyasadeva, his disciples, and the disciples of his disciples. One who listens to this narration will increase in spiritual strength. So you want to know why we hear these kinds of things? You know, dynasties of kings, and the analytical explanation, historical development of the various scriptures, and how that all fits together. It's for this reason, to increase our spiritual strength. The more you hear about these things, the more we become strong spiritually. Now we've come to the end of this chapter. I wish I'd have known. Our referee wasn't here yesterday, I think. And so I didn't realize I only had 2 more verses to go. Otherwise I'd have finished the chapter yesterday. But thus ends the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 12th canto, 7th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled The Puranic Literature. Haribol. So, cursory study of the textbooks that we study and how the knowledge comes down to us through the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All right, moving right along. This is wonderful. Chapter 8. Markandeya's prayers to Nara-Narayana Rishi. This chapter describes how Markandeya Rishi performed austerities, defeated by his potency Cupid and all his associates, and offered prayers to Lord Sri Hari in his forms of Nara and Narayana. Sri Shaunaka was confused about the extraordinarily long lifespan of Sri Markandeya, who had taken birth in Shaunaka's own dynasty, yet who had moved about alone in the ocean of devastation millions of years previously, and seen a wonderful young child lying upon a banyan leaf. It seemed to Shaunaka that Markandeya had lived through 2 days of Brahma, and he asked Sri Sutta Goswami to explain this. Sutta Goswami replied that the sage Markandeya, after receiving the purificatory ritual of Brahminical initiation from his father, had fixed himself in the vow of lifelong celibacy. He then worshipped the Supreme Lord Hari for 6 lifetimes of Manu. That's a long time. We could analyze that, but that'll be a waste of time right now. In the 7th Manvantara, Lord Indra sent Kamadev, Cupid, and his associates to interrupt the sage's austerities. But Markandeya Rishi defeated them by the potency generated from his penance. Then, to show mercy to Markandeya, Lord Sri Hari appeared before him in the form of Nara-Narayana. Sri Markandeya prostrated himself in obeisance and then worshipped the lords by offering them comfortable seats, water for washing their feet, and other respectful presentations. He then prayed, "O Almighty Lord, you bring to life the vital air of all creatures, and you also protect the 3 worlds, vanquish distress, and award liberation. You never allow those who have taken shelter of you to be defeated by any kind of misery. Attaining your lotus feet is the only auspicious goal for the conditioned souls, and service to you fulfills all their desires. Your pastimes, enacted in the mode of pure goodness, can award everyone salvation from material life. Therefore, those who are intelligent worship your personal form of pure goodness, named Sri Narayana, along with Nara, who represents your unalloyed devotee." The living entity bewildered by illusion can directly understand you if he receives the knowledge presented in the Vedas and promulgated by you, the spiritual master of the entire universe. Even great thinkers like Brahma are simply bewildered when they try to understand your identity by struggling on the path of Sankhya Yoga. You yourself manifest the proponents of Sankhya and other philosophies, and thus your true personal identity remains hidden beneath the designative covering of the Jiva soul. I offer my homage to you, the Maha Purusha. Text 1. Sri Shaunaka said, "O Sutta, may you live a long life. O saintly one, best of speakers, please continue speaking to us. Indeed, only you can show men the path out of the ignorance in which they are wandering." Purport. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the sages saw that Sutta Goswami was about to end his narration of Srimad-Bhagavatam, and thus they urged him to first tell the story of Markandeya Rishi. Text 2-5. Authorities say that Markandeya Rishi, the son of Mrikandu, was an exceptionally long-lived sage who was the only survivor at the end of Brahma's day, when the entire universe was merged in the flood of annihilation. But this same Markandeya Rishi, the foremost descendant of Bhrigu, took birth in my own family during the current day of Brahma, and we have not yet seen any total annihilation in this day of Brahma. Also, it is well known that Markandeya, while wandering helplessly in the great ocean of annihilation, saw in those fearful waters a wonderful personality, an infant boy, lying alone within the fold of a banyan leaf. O Sutta, I am most bewildered and curious about this great sage, Markandeya Rishi. O great yogi, you are universally accepted as the authority on all the Puranas. Therefore, kindly dispel my confusion. Purport. Lord Brahma's day, consisting of his 12 hours, lasts 4,320,000,000 years, and his night is of the same duration. Apparently Markandeya lived throughout one such day and night, and in the following day of Brahma continued living as the same Markandeya. It seems that when annihilation occurred during Brahma's night, the sage wandered throughout the fearful waters of destruction and saw within those waters an extraordinary personality lying on a banyan leaf. All of these mysteries concerning Markandeya will be clarified by Sutta Goswami at the request of the great sages. Text 6. Sutta Goswami said, O great sage Shonaka, your very question will help remove everyone's illusion, for it leads to the topics of Lord Narayana, which cleanse away the contamination of this Kali Yuga. Text 7 through 11. After being purified by his father's performance of the prescribed rituals leading to Markandeya's Brahminical initiation, Markandeya studied the Vedic hymns and strictly observed the regulative principles. He became advanced in austerity and Vedic knowledge and remained a lifelong celibate. Appearing most peaceful with his matted hair and his clothing made of bark, he furthered his spiritual progress by carrying the mendicant's water pot, staff, sacred thread, brahmachari belt, black deerskin, lotus seed prayer beads, and bundles of kusha grass. At the sacred junctures of the day, he regularly worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead in 5 forms: the sacrificial fire, the sun, his spiritual master, the brahmanas, and the supersoul within his heart. Morning and evening he would go out begging, and upon returning he would present all the food he had collected to his spiritual master. Only when his spiritual master invited him would he silently take his one meal of the day. Otherwise he would fast. Thus devoted to austerity and Vedic study, Markandeya Rishi worshipped the Supreme Master of the senses, the Personality of Godhead, for countless millions of years, and in this way he conquered unconquerable death. Text 12. Lord Brahma, Bhrigu Muni, Lord Shiva, Prajapati Daksha, the great sons of Brahma, and many others among the human beings, demigods, forefathers, and ghostly spirits were all astonished by the achievement of Markandeya Rishi. In this way, the devotional mystic Markandeya maintained rigid celibacy through penance, study of the Vedas, and self-discipline. With his mind thus freed of all disturbances, he turned it inward and meditated on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who lies beyond the material senses. Text 14. While the mystic sage was thus concentrated his mind by powerful yoga practice. The tremendous period of 6 lifetimes of Manu passed. How many Manus are there in a day of Brahma? 14, I think. This is more than half of Brahma's day. That means more than 3 billion, no, more than a billion, more than 1.5 billion years. Text 15. O Brahmana, during the 7th reign of Manu, the current age, Lord Indra came to know of Markandeya's austerities and became fearful of his growing mystic potency. Thus he tried to impede the sage's penances. 16. To ruin the sage's spiritual practice, Lord Indra sent Cupid, beautiful celestial singers, dancing girls, the season of spring, and the sandalwood-scented breeze from the Malaya hills, along with greed and intoxication personified. The soldiers of evil. Text 17. O most powerful Shonaka, they went to Markandeya's hermitage on the northern side of the Himalaya mountains, where the Pushpabhadra river passes by the famous peak Chitra. Text 18 to 20. Groves of pious trees decorated the holy ashram of Markandeya Rishi, and many saintly brahmanas lived there, enjoying the abundant, pure, sacred ponds. The ashram resounded with the buzzing of intoxicated bees and the cooing of excited cuckoos, while jubilant peacocks danced about. Indeed, many families of maddened birds crowded that hermitage. The springtime breeze sent by Lord Indra entered there, carrying cooling drops of spray from nearby waterfalls. Fragrant from the embrace of forest flowers, that breeze entered the hermitage and began invoking the lusty spirit of Cupid. Text 21. Springtime then appeared in Markandeya's ashram. Indeed, the evening sky, glowing with the light of the rising moon, became the very face of spring, and sprouts and fresh blossoms virtually covered the multitude of trees and creepers. Text 22. Cupid, the master of many heavenly women, then came there, holding his bow and arrows. He was followed by groups of Gandharvas playing musical instruments and singing. Text 23. These servants of Indra found the sage sitting in meditation, having just offered his prescribed oblations into the sacrificial fire. His eyes closed in trance, he seemed invincible, like fire personified. Text 24. The women danced before the sage, and the celestial singers sang to the charming accompaniment of drums, cymbals, and venas. 25. While the son of passion, greed personified, Spring, and the other servants of Indra all tried to agitate Markandeya's mind, Cupid drew his 5-headed arrow and fixed it upon his bow. What a scene. The Apsara, Punjikastali, made a show of playing with a number of toy balls. Her waist seemed weighed down by her heavy breast, and the wreath of flowers in her hair became disheveled as she ran about after the balls, glancing here and there. The belt of her thin garment loosened, and suddenly the wind blew her clothes away. 28. Cupid, thinking he had conquered the sage, then shot his arrow. But all these attempts to seduce Markandeya proved futile, just like the useless endeavors of an atheist. All glories to Markandeya Rishi. O learned Shonaka, While Cupid and his followers tried to harm the sage, they felt themselves being burned alive by his potency. Jai. Thus they stopped their mischief, just like children who have aroused a sleeping snake. 30. O Brahmana, the followers of Lord Indra had impudently attacked the saintly Markandeya, yet he did not succumb to any influence of false ego. For great souls, such tolerance is not at all surprising. Text 31. The mighty King Indra was most astonished when he heard of the mystic prowess of the exalted sage Markandeya, and saw how Cupid and his associates had become powerless in his presence. Desiring to bestow his mercy upon the saintly Markandeya, who had perfectly fixed his mind in self-realization through penance, Vedic study, and observance of regulative principles, the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally appeared before the sage in the forms of Nara and Narayan. 33-34. One of them was of a whitish complexion, and the other blackish. They both had 4 arms. Their eyes resembled the petals of blooming lotuses, and they wore garments of black deerskin and bark, along with the 3-stranded sacred thread. In their hands, which were most purifying, they carried the mendicant's water pot, straight bamboo staff, and lotus seed prayer beads, as well as the all-purifying Vedas in the symbolic form of bundles of dharma grass. Their bearing was tall, and their yellow effulgence the color of radiant lightning. Appearing as austerity personified, they were being worshipped by the foremost demigods. Text 35. These two sages, Nara and Narayana, were the direct personal forms of the Supreme Lord. When Markandeya Rishi saw them, he immediately stood up, and then with great respect offered them obeisances by falling down flat on the ground like a stick. Text 36. The ecstasy of seeing them completely satisfied Markandeya's body, mind, and senses, and caused the hairs on his body to stand on end, and his eyes to fill with tears. Overwhelmed, Markandeya found it difficult to look at them. 37. Standing with his hands folded in supplication, and his head bowed in humility, Markandeya felt such eagerness that he imagined he was embracing the 2 lords. In a voice choked with ecstasy, he repeatedly said, "I offer you my humble obeisances." He gave them sitting places and washed their feet, and then he worshipped them with presentations of arghya, sandalwood pulp, fragrant oils, incense, and flower garlands. Markandeya Rishi once again bowed down at the lotus feet of those 2 most worshipable sages who were sitting at ease, ready to bestow all mercy upon him. He then addressed them as follows. 40. Sri Markandeya said, "O Almighty Lord, how can I possibly describe you? You awaken the vital air, which then impels the mind, senses, and power of speech to act. This is true for all ordinary conditioned souls, and even for great demigods like Brahma and Shiva. So it is certainly true for me. Nevertheless, you become the intimate friend of those who worship you." 41. O Supreme Personality of Godhead, these 2 personal forms of yours have appeared in order to bestow the ultimate benefit for the 3 worlds, the cessation of material misery, and the conquest of death. My Lord, although you create this universe and then assume many transcendental forms to protect it, you also swallow it up, just like a spider who spins and later withdraws its web. 42. Because you are the protector and the supreme controller of all moving and non-moving beings, anyone who takes shelter of your lotus feet can never be touched by the contamination of material work, material qualities, or time. Great sages who have assimilated the essential meaning of the Vedas offer their prayers to you. To gain your association, they bow down to you at every opportunity and constantly worship you and meditate upon you. Text 43. My dear Lord, even Lord Brahma, who enjoys his exalted position for the entire duration of the universe, fears the passage of time. Then what to speak of those whom Brahma creates, the conditioned souls? They encounter fearful dangers at every step of their lives. I do not know of any relief from this fear except shelter at your lotus feet, which are the very form of liberation. Text 44. Therefore I worship your lotus feet, having renounced my identification with the material body and everything else that covers my true self. These useless, insubstantial, and temporary coverings are merely presumed to be separate from you, whose intelligence encompasses all truth. By attaining you, the Supreme Godhead, and the Master of the soul, one attains everything desirable. Purport. One who falsely identifies himself as the material body or mind automatically feels entitled to exploit the material world. But when we realize our eternal spiritual nature and Lord Krishna's supreme proprietorship over all that be, we renounce our false enjoying propensity by the strength of spiritual knowledge. Text 45. O my Lord, O supreme friend of the conditioned soul, although for the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of this world, you accept the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance, which constitute your illusory potency, you specifically employ the mode of goodness to liberate the conditioned souls. The two other modes simply bring them suffering, illusion, and fear. Purport. The words Lila Drita indicate that the creative activities of Lord Brahma, the destructive activities of Lord Shiva, and the sustaining functions of Lord Vishnu are all pastimes of the Absolute Truth, Lord Krishna. But ultimately, only Lord Vishnu can award liberation from the clutches of material illusion, as indicated by the words Sattva, Mayi, Prashant, Yai. Our passionate and ignorant activities cause great suffering, illusion, and fear for us and others. Therefore they should be given up. One should become firmly situated in the mode of goodness and live peacefully on the spiritual platform. The essence of goodness is to renounce selfish interest in all one's activities and thus dedicate one's entire being to the Supreme Being, Lord Krishna, who is the source of our existence. 46. O Lord, because fearlessness, spiritual happiness, and the kingdom of God are all achieved through the mode of pure goodness, your devotees consider this mode, but never passion and ignorance, to be the direct manifestation of you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Intelligent persons thus worship your beloved transcendental form, composed of pure goodness, along with the spiritual forms of your pure devotees. Purport. Intelligent persons do not worship the demigods, who represent the modes of passion and ignorance. Lord Brahma represents passion, Lord Shiva represents ignorance, and the demigods such as Indra also represent the modes of material nature. But Lord Vishnu, or Narayana, represents pure spiritual goodness, which brings one realization of the spiritual world, freedom from fear, and spiritual bliss. Such benefits can never be derived from impure material goodness, for it is always mixed with the modes of passion and ignorance. As clearly indicated in this verse, the transcendental form of God is fully constituted of eternal spiritual goodness, and thus has no tinge of the material mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. Text 47. I offer my humble obeisances to Him, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the all-pervading and all-inclusive form of the universe, as well as its spiritual master. I bow down to Lord Narayana, the supremely worshipable deity, appearing as a sage, and also to the saintly Nara, the best of human beings, who is fixed in perfect goodness, fully in control of his speech, and the propagator of the Vedic literatures. 48. A materialist, his intelligence perverted by the action of his deceptive senses, cannot recognize you at all, although you are always present within his own senses and heart, and also among the objects of his perception. Yet even though one's understanding has been covered by your illusory potency, if one obtains Vedic knowledge from you, the supreme spiritual master of all, he can directly understand you. Text 49. My dear Lord, the Vedic literatures alone reveal confidential knowledge of your Supreme Personality, and thus even such great scholars as Lord Brahma himself are bewildered in their attempts to understand you through empirical methods. Each philosopher understands you according to his particular speculative conclusions. I worship that Supreme Person, knowledge of whom is hidden by the bodily designations covering the conditioned soul's spiritual identity. Purport. Even great demigods like Brahma are bewildered in their speculative attempts to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Each philosopher is covered by a unique combination of the modes of nature, and thus describes the Supreme Truth according to his own material conditioning. Therefore, even strenuous empirical endeavor will never bring one to the conclusion of all knowledge. The highest knowledge is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one can understand Him only by fully surrendering to Him and serving Him with love. This is why Markandeya Rishi states here, Vande Maha Purusham, I simply worship that Supreme Personality. Those who try to worship God, but at the same time continue speculating or acting fruitively, will attain only mixed and bewildering results. To be pure, a devotee must give up all fruitive activity and mental speculation. In that way, his loving service to the Lord will yield perfect knowledge of the Supreme. Only this perfection can satisfy the eternal soul. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 12th canto, 8th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled Markandeya's Prayers to Nara-Narayana Rishi. Jai Markandeya Prabhu ki Jai. Markandeya Rishi ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. The Supreme Personality of Godhead ki Jai. Okay, moving right along. Chapter 9. Markandeya Rishi sees the illusory potency of the Lord. This chapter describes Markandeya's Rishi's vision of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's illusory energy. Satisfied by the prayers of Sri Markandeya, had offered, the Supreme Lord told him to ask for a benediction, and the sage said he wanted to see the Lord's illusory energy. The Supreme Lord Hari, present before Markandeya in the form of Nara-Narayana, replied, "So be it," and then left for Badarakashram. One day, as Sri Markandeya was offering his evening prayers, the water of devastation suddenly flooded the three worlds. With great difficulty, Markandeya moved about all alone in this water for a long time, until he came upon a banyan tree. Lying upon a leaf of that tree was an infant boy glowing with charming effulgence. As Markandeya moved toward the leaf, he was pulled by the boy's inhalation and, just like a mosquito, drawn within his body. Inside the boy's body, Markandeya was amazed to see the entire universe just as it had been before the annihilation. After a moment, the sage was carried out by the force of the child's exhalation and hurled back into the ocean of annihilation. Then, seeing that the child on the leaf was actually Sri Hari, the Transcendental Lord situated within his own heart, Sri Markandeya tried to embrace him, but at that moment, Lord Hari, the master of all mystic power, disappeared. Then the waters of annihilation disappeared as well, and Sri Markandeya found himself in his own ashram, just as before. Careful what you ask for. Okay, I'm going to stop the reading there, and we'll start this chapter on Sunday. Tomorrow we take a break from the reading because of the intense internet activity going on in this building. So, any revelations coming from the assembled sages? Any points of interest or revelations? Radharaman has his hand up, his finger up, immediately.
I just found this verse very striking. 11.8.43. My dear Lord, even Lord Brahma, who enjoys his exalted position for the entire duration of the universe, fears the passage of time. Then what to speak of those whom Brahma creates, the conditioned souls? They encounter fearful dangers at every step of their lives. I do not know of any relief from this fear, except shelter at your lotus feet, which are the very form of liberation.
Yes, and Srila Prabhupada often said that until one actually realizes that he's actually afraid, and the conditioned souls generally are so conditioned that they can't even admit that they're suffering or that they're afraid, even though you can see it in their eyes. Just like when you walk up to an animal, you can see in their eyes the fear. And the birds can fly, like we all enjoy watching them fly, and sometimes we might even think, "Ooh, that would be nice. I'd like to fly like that, free as a bird." But you look in their faces or watch if they're on the ground and eating something and they're always looking around like, who's going to come and have me for dinner, at any second. And the cats and dogs, they're all fearful. All the conditioned souls are. Even the most elevated, now it's described that Lord Brahma even is afraid of time. So Prabhupada said many times that the first thing we have to do is actually admit that. Admit that we're conditioned souls and that we want out. That we actually want to be free, and admit that we aren't free. Because most conditioned souls are thinking they're free, even though they are completely controlled by time, by the modes of nature. So as long as you're in that conditioned state, how can you even want to look for, the absolute truth? It's not possible. Yeah. Very interesting how Markandeya asked to be able to see the illusory energy. We'll hear the details in this next chapter about exactly how long it was and how he felt and what happened during that time. Give us some idea. The strength of the illusory energy. If anybody can think they can conquer it, they're barking up the wrong tree. We're getting just a little glimpse of it with this coronavirus. The power of the illusory energy, what it can do. Turn the whole world upside down. All these powerful economies and politically powerful entities, they're just being brought to their knees just by a little virus. What to speak of the devastation, the ocean of devastation. So the reality is that the pure devotees who hear these things and have enough faith and strength, remember we heard this, they've heard the Puranas, they've heard the Vedas, they've studied, they understand, they've done austerities, they have spiritual strength from doing those things, and then they can understand, and they can see for themselves the power of the illusory energy, and they stop trying to control it. That's the secret, to stop trying to conquer and control the material energy. Then they can be submissive and hear properly from the pure devotees and become blissful even in this circumstance. Thank you, my dear Radharaman, for that. Pointing that out, that verse. Really nice. Really nice. Anything else?
There's an appreciation from Sudevi Das.
Hare Krishna Sudevi, I saw that you got a new gift of a Prabhupada Murti, who by the way was really beautiful. It was the nicest form of Prabhupada's Murti, small one I've ever seen.
She says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, your dedication to reading to us is true love. I feel loved. Thank you so much for being there for us. Glories to Srila Prabhupada.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Purity is your force, and I see some good results in my life.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. That makes my day and my life. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, we'll wind up for today, and tomorrow we'll skip. I've been, I don't know if all of you are aware, but I've been put on by the BBT trustees and the GBC, I've been put on a revisions review board with 6 other senior devotees, and it's going to be a very interesting experience to try to develop the principles for evaluating the revisions of Srila Prabhupada's book since he left. And it's quite a daunting task for me, especially in my condition now. But by the blessings of the Vaishnavas and Prabhupada, we'll do our best. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you Sunday night, not tomorrow night. Oh, one more thing? Okay, we've got somebody else out there.
This is from Bhakta Charlie Davison.
Hey Charlie, Haribol Bhakta Charlie.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
You still locked down over there in Wales?
He says, I really liked the purport to verse 49, where Prabhupada said each philosopher is covered by a unique combination of the modes of material nature and thus describe the Supreme Truth according to his own material conditioning.
This is very, very nice that you brought it up. I thought about it too when I was reading. What an interesting concept this is. Because all the, Tarko Pratishtam, Vishya, Shrutaya Bibina, the Munis, the great thinkers, because each one of them has a different combination of modes in nature, when they philosophize, they come up with something different than anyone else. And therefore they're always contradicting one another, arguing with one another, developing different philosophies, and those philosophies confuse the conditioned souls, including themselves. And that's all being done by, like I was speaking yesterday, the package that each of them have developed by their unfulfilled material desires. Yeah, it's a very interesting point, Bhakta Charlie, very interesting point. Therefore, pure Vaishnavas, frankly, they're not so much interested in the argument. Great rishis and sages sometimes argue with one another, but the pure devotees of the Lord, they're not interested in logical arguments. It doesn't give them any taste. There's no taste to it. They want to taste the lotus feet of the Lord, the sweetness of the honey of the lotus feet of the Lord, and his sound and his form and his service. That's why when we hear the Bhagavatam together and then relish, discuss the different points and relish, and each one has different points, but we're not arguing with one another, because Krishna is in the center, and we all accept that Krishna is the absolute truth, and the person we're trying to satisfy by our philosophical understanding. So this is the process. This is the process for developing a taste for being with Krishna. It begins with the taste of chanting Hare Krishna, Ma Mantra, Kirtan, and hearing Srimad-Bhagavatam and the scriptures that relate to the Srimad-Bhagavatam. That taste is what we're looking for, that mercy. That's why we follow the regulated principles. Not that the regulated principles or the rituals of our service and our worship are the ends in themselves. The end is the taste, the taste that will result in us wanting and actually remembering, wanting to remember and actually remembering Krishna constantly, without stopping. Ragadvesha vimuktaisthu vishayan indriyaischaran atmavasher vidayatma prasadam adhigacchati. You can't do that without receiving the mercy of Krishna. And you receive the full mercy of Krishna by following the regulative principles of freedom. Regulative principles of freedom. By following the regulated principles given to us by our spiritual master, sincerely and strictly, we become eventually free from the need to follow regulated principles, and we can spontaneously love Krishna. Then we get so much more from our hearing and chanting and remembering. This is the master. Always remember Krishna and never forget him. And all the rules and regulations are the servants of those two principles according to Rupa Goswami. That's what makes us Rupanugas. That and distributing these literatures to others. We can become servants of Rupa Goswami and actually Rupanuga devotees by relishing these things and by giving them to others. Okay, thank you, Bhakti Charlie, and thank you all of you out in cyberspace. We'll see you on Sunday night. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Wait, there's something else. Rati. Okay, Rati.
She says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. I have a question. I heard tonight that non-devotees are afraid of time. In my work, I see myself so often struggling with the lack of time. How does a devotee view time management? Could you comment, please?
A devotee cannot stand to waste time. Because if we are engaged in activity constantly in the service of the Lord, and that can be done even in your work, my dear Rati. Prabhupada gives the example. If a man and family man is working hard to maintain the family, then he keeps pictures of his family on his desk or above his office, in the office, and he looks at them every once in a while, and he remembers them all through the day, because that's why he's working so hard to maintain his family. So a devotee serves Krishna with everything that he does, and always remembers that he's doing this for Krishna, even his prescribed duty. And therefore he manages his time by simply absorbing himself in thinking of Krishna constantly. And what that does is it gives him a sense of urgency at whatever he does, and he doesn't like to waste time. That's how a pure devotee manages time. Because time moves on no matter what you think, no matter how you plan it. Time moves on, and the plan of time is the one that comes into being. It is everything. Everyone is, being, pushed by the force of time. So the pure devotee doesn't worry about it, but he doesn't want to waste it. He uses every moment in somehow serving, remembering, worshipping Krishna. Man mana bhava mad bhakto, madhyaji mamnaras. I was listening to a very nice conversation. Srila Prabhupada went to New Mayapur in 1976, and he gave this very lovely class. It was a Bhagavad Gita class, and the class only lasted 11 minutes because he wasn't feeling so well. That's when his health started to go down, towards the last half of 1976. He wasn't feeling so well. But he was there always, dutiful, to give the classes. But then he just gave a very short class, and then he started to ask the devotees to discuss the various points that were coming up in the class. And the class was on manmana, mababad bhakto. And one of the devotees, it might even been Indradumna Maharaj, maybe, or Vishwambara or somebody, they said, Srila Prabhupada, how do sometimes we feel like we can't succeed in doing our service. We can't do it properly. We can't. And Prabhupada said, you can't chant Hare Krishna? And then everybody laughed simultaneously, because what he was saying is that it's not the result that's the thing you're looking for. That belongs to Krishna. But it's the devotion itself, the service itself, especially in the beginning of devotional life, that is most important and gives a taste. So he said, there is no question of being unsuccessful in devotional service. Prabhupada used to use the example of Jatayu. We just heard about it. We're recording the Ramayana, and we heard recently about how Jatayu attacked Ravana when Ravana carried away Sita. And he was a gigantic, he was the king of birds. And he was powerful. And even Ravana, who could defeat anybody, he got a thrashing from Jatayu. I didn't remember this, but he did. And finally, he succumbed, because Ravana was very powerful. And he fell to the ground, and he was not dead, but he was dying when Rama came with Lakshman, and then he told them what happened. Jatayu told them what happened, and told them that Ravana, and he pointed in the direction of the south, and Ram was overwhelmed, and then he left his body. And Ram was overwhelmed with love, and he personally went through all the rituals and said all the mantras, and did the rites, the last rites, and everything. And so Prabhupada used the example. It wasn't that because Jatayu didn't kill Ravana or rescue Sita that he didn't please Lord Rama. He was so pleased with him because he gave up his life, he gave his service. He did what he did out of love. And even though he was not successful, he pleased Lord Ramachandra completely. So that's what time is for in this material world. It's meant not to be wasted, and it's meant to be to do whatever we're doing in remembrance of Krishna, for the pleasure of Krishna. Even you're there doing your social work with all these unfortunate people, you have to remember Krishna constantly. And the more you do that, the more your time becomes automatically engaged properly, even though you may not have the perfect, materially, perfect situation. And you may think, I'm not succeeding. There is no failure in devotional service. Keep practicing chanting Hare Krishna in your mind all day. Automatically, Krishna gives you intelligence. And with that, I gotta stop. Hare Krishna. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. See you all on Sunday night at 7 o'clock on the dot. Well, or 7:10 or so. Here in the haven of Hythe, the live studios, which is going to be the live studios for quite some time because we're locked down over here. Hare Krishna. See you on Sunday. Hari Bol.